Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it's Tier List Tuesday. In a little bit under a month from now, I am dropping my top 50 players in the NHL. And usually in the lead up to my updated top 50 players, I like to, on Tier List Tuesday, go through every single team's number one defenseman, number one center, and number one goaltender, and kind of update those tier lists. I do it about twice a year. So today we're doing the defenseman. Today we are looking at every single team's top defenseman. We got 5 different tiers. Superstar, this is a legit top 15 player in the entire NHL when it comes to defensemen and forwards. Star, they're hovering around 65, 70, maybe even point per game kind of production. A top 10 defenseman, no doubt, in the NHL at this point. Elite, that's more so like 11 through 20. You're a very, very good elite number one defenseman. Not very good because there is their own very good tier. Very good is obviously more so of like a 45 to 60 point number one that also play solid defensively. And then good to solid, you're probably on a rebuilding team. You're a good to solid player, but really nothing special. You're not like on an actual high level playoff team level. Number one. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. And up first, we got Jacob Slavin. I'm going to put him in elite. Maybe doesn't have the offensive production that we're going to see some of the guys when it comes to elite, but he is arguably still one of, if not the best defenseman in the entire NHL. He's an elite guy. Gothesbear might be more the offensive defenseman on that team, but he is still definitely the most valuable defenseman, no doubt. Charlie McAvoy, I think you got to bump him down. Maybe he was in star like a year or two ago. I think at this point you got to bump him down into elite. Still a guy that I would absolutely love to have on my team from Long Island. Great, very good both ways, but the offense hasn't really come to what we expected maybe 2 to 3 years ago when we were just waiting for that breakout when he was going to have that monster season. And even defensively, he has been worse than prior years. So still an elite guy, still a top 15 defenseman, no doubt, but he went from kind of like in that 4 to 7 range to more so in that like 8 to 13 range, given his play the last 2 years. Roman Josi, I'm still going with Star on the Nashville Predators. He's like the one guy that has still been very, very good for this team. Him and probably UC Saros have lived up to their bargain. The rest of the team has just kind of shat the bed. Still, if he had an actual solid team around him, would yet again be a 70-plus point guy. This year, he might still go for like 70-ish points and is solid defensively. He's not a defensive stalwart by any stretch, but he is definitely maybe slightly below average defensively. But when you have the offensive output of a Roman Josi, 85 points last year, again, on not that impressive of an offensive team, he's definitely still a star in the NHL. Mackenzie Weegar, I'm going to go with very good. You could definitely make an argument to me that he is an elite. I think he is one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL. And Rasmus Anderson, if I considered him the number one here, he'd probably be in the same tier as well. Should have been on Team Canada. Maybe he will if there is an injury, God forbid. Should probably be that next guy up, even ahead of Evan Bouchard, just because he is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, can play both sides. But yeah, Mackenzie Weegar, very good defenseman. Last year had like 20 goals or something like that. It's very impressive. Rasmus Dahlin, I'm going with Star. I'm pretty confidently going with Star. Even on a dog shit Buffalo Sabres team, he's still having a very good year. And if you transported him on a better team, I think he'd be a 75 to 80 point guy and has, even on Buffalo again, been pretty solid defensively the last couple of years. He's still a top 8 defenseman for me. Kel McCarr, definitely still a superstar, although maybe I've talked down on him recently in the sense where like Quinn Hughes is now at his level. He's still a very good player. The generational offensive defenseman talent. The defense maybe hasn't been there in prior years, but again, this is a guy that might end up hitting like the 100-point mark this year. He's great. He's probably going to hit 90 yet, for the first time. He hit 90 last year, I think. But yeah, back-to-back 90-point seasons would be nuts. Definitely a superstar. Brandon Montour, you could go with Vince Dunn here, but regardless, my answer doesn't really change that much. I think him and Vince Dunn are both very good top 25, sniffing top 20 defensemen in the entire NHL. When looking at him in the Seattle this season, on pace for around 55-ish points. He's really translated. Had a bit of a down year offensively last year in Florida, kind of just because he was stuck in that like 3-man rotation that they had. But he's been great for Seattle. Even though Seattle has not been that good of a team, he's been playing like 24, 25 minutes a night pretty effectively. I've been pretty impressed with Brandon Montour. Still think that deal is going to be a disaster in like the final 3 years. But right now, he's definitely worth $7.1 million. Zach Werenski, this feels amazing to say because I had him in my top 10 this offseason, or maybe he was number 11. I have been gassing this guy up for the longest time. I think he's been one of the most underrated defensemen in the entire NHL because he's been so productive in Columbus. Last year, 57 points in 70 games on one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. And now Columbus is actually somewhat competent around him. and he might end up being a Norris finalist. I think he's definitely going to finish top 5 at this point. What he has done this season in terms of transforming Columbus's offense has been so impressive. He's been their most valuable player, and this team is far exceeding expectations. Awesome from Zach Werenski, the ideal 6'2", 6'3" offensive defenseman that still has some physicality and is solid defensively. He's great. Mikhail Sergachev, I'm going to go with very good. Maybe not the same player that he was in the 2023 season when he had like 64 points as like the one beat of Victor Hedman, but he has bounced back pretty solid since that nasty leg break. Reliable, around 50-ish point guy, offensive defenseman. Morgan Rielly, I might get shit for this. Very good offensively, but there is just too many defensive deficiencies in his game, in my opinion. Basically, the last 3 to 4 years, he's not that good defensively. So as a result, I can't have him in very good. But again, still a very good offensive defenseman, but the defensive problems are kind of there. Dougie Hamilton, I'm going to go with elite. He has bounced back in a big way. This guy was awesome for me. Someone dropped him after he went scoreless in his first 7 games, which, like, rightfully so. He's coming off an injury in our fantasy league. Since then, he has been absolutely money. Similarly to Morgan Rielly, maybe there are some defensive deficiencies, but he is awesome offensively, has been clicking around point per game ever since then, and he has the track record of multiple elite seasons throughout his career. He's regained his status as a top 15 defenseman that maybe he lost after missing 60 games last season. Miro Heiskanen, I'm still going with star. This guy maybe offensively has been a little bit lackluster this season, but also Jason Robertson has, also Wyatt Johnston, Rupe Hintz. Defensively, he's still one of the best among legit number 1 defensemen, one of the best defensive defensemen in the entire NHL. He is just such a smooth skating, agile defenseman. In the offense, I still think is there. This guy's 2 years removed from 73 points. He's still a no doubt top 8 defenseman in the NHL for me. Some people might want him lower, but no, I'm sticking by Miro Heiskanen. Guy is still an absolute stud. Erik Karlsson, I was expecting more out of him this season. He hasn't been horrible by any stretch, but at this point, he's like an all offense, not a ton of defense kind of guy. Even with Marcus Pettersson, hasn't been playing that good of hockey. Shea Theodore, I'm going to go with very good. Basically, since he got to Vegas, he's been hovering at around 60, 65-ish points. Maybe not the best defensively, but yeah, guy's a Stanley Cup, guy's a baller. He gets very good. John Carlson, based on how he's playing this year, you could put him in star. I'm just going to put him in elite right now. He's one of the main catalysts for this Washington Capitals start. Last year, maybe it was a little bit of a down year. We thought he was regressing. No, this guy still has a shit ton of game, and especially when you put him with solid partners like Martin Feravari, like Jacob Tricken, how they were clicking early on in the season, he can be awesome. He can yet again be a top 20 defenseman. He has a lot of game left in him, and he's fully showing it this season. Quinn Hughes, no shit here. Obviously, superstar, arguably the best defenseman in the entire NHL. Norris favorite right now. He is awesome. He is one of the best offensive defensemen I've ever seen in my entire life. Colton Parayko, basically the reverse of Morgan Rielly. Awesome defensively, not a ton there. Awesome defensively, not a ton there offensively. His point production's okay this year, but yeah, he's like a low 30-ish point, great defense. I get, you can maybe say, why do you have Slavin this high? Slavin has had good offensive seasons, and I still think that he has that offense potential to go for like 45 points-ish. Parayko, definitely more so defensively, and the underlying offensive numbers are like horrible. Jake Sanderson, I gotta pump the brakes. We got a nice even distribution right now. I didn't even intend to do this. We gotta pump the brakes on Jake Sanderson. I'm not gonna lie. I think he will eventually get to elite for sure. He's only 22 years old at this point. He had a very good first 10 games of the season, but even as a biased Ottawa Senators guy, in my opinion, or I am pretty biased towards the Ottawa Senators, I do have to pump the brakes on him a little bit. Still very solid both ways, but the offensive explosion that we were expecting has kind of cooled off as of right now. So I still think he's good. I still think he's a top 30 to 45 defenseman in the NHL, but I was expecting a little bit more this season. I got to hold him accountable. Jackson Lacombe, I didn't know who to choose for the Anaheim Ducks. He's been playing a shit ton recently. His last 5 games, he's been averaging around 22 minutes a night. So I put him there. It really doesn't change if you put, well, obviously they just traded Cam Fowler. If you put Jacob Trouba, if you put Radko Gudas, if you put Olen Zellweger, if you put Pavel Mintyukov, they would all be in solid. I think Jackson Lacombe has definitely impressed me this season, especially recently. But yeah, at the end of the day, he's definitely not a legit number 1 in the NHL, and the Anaheim Ducks are not that good of a team. Victor Hedman, I am going to put him in star. I know that I'm going to get a lot of shit saying, you said Victor Hedman was washed up. He was bad. He objectively was bad defensively the last few years. He's not bad this year. Obviously, my opinion is going to change when he plays much better. I said first off, I had him at like number 16 or number 17 on my top 20 defensemen in the NHL. I never said that he was like actively a bad player. I just said at this point he's just an offensive defenseman. He's a very good. He still always was a great offensive defenseman. So I think people are going to come for me for that. But the defense has massively improved this season. Maybe that's because Tampa has more of a defense core nowadays, especially after getting a guy like Ryan McDonagh back in the mix. They're more so prioritizing the defensive side of the ice. But yeah, he's around point per game. He's been good defensively. I got to put him in star yet again. And again, I never said that he was a actively bad player. I still had him as like a top 20 defenseman. Moritz Seider, I'm going to go with very good. His defense has bounced back massively this season. Offensively, didn't really take a step this year, yet again on pace for like around 45-ish points. But again, this guy is about as physical as it gets. What's the stat? 200 hits and 200 block shots last season or something like that. He's a physical monster, and defensively, he has been pretty awesome this year, especially him and Simon Edvinsson. Josh Morrissey, I think you got to go with star. Yet again, another very solid offensive season with the Winnipeg Jets. Defensively, he's not anything special, but he's capable for the most part. So I think when you got a guy that can give you around 70, 75 points and is okay defensively, that is definitely a star level player. Drew Doughty, when he is healthy, he's elite. It's going to be tough because he's 34 or 35 years old, coming off an ankle break. I'm assuming that he's going to return to form like we saw him last year. And last year he was 50 points, awesome both ways, playing like 26 minutes a night. So he's still an elite guy in my opinion. Jake Wallman, solely this season, has been probably elite. I'm just going to put him in good to solid right now. He is clicking at like 65-point pace, and his underlying numbers are awesome relative to the rest of the Sharks decor. But yeah, I'm going to pump the brakes just a little bit. Adam Fox, I'm still putting him in superstar. I agree Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are better, but I think what Adam Fox has done the last 3 or 4 years in terms of both sides of the ice around point per game, 75-ish point pace, while being great defensively. And this year he's been awesome when he's not playing with Ryan Lindgren. I probably referenced that in other videos. But yeah, I still think that he's the clear-cut number 3. Like, who are you picking over him? Yossi struggling a little bit this year, getting up there in age. Heiskanen struggling. Hedman, I guess you could say, is solely better this season, but Fox was clearly better in 2023 and 2024. So I'm still putting him in superstar. Still think he's a top 15, top 20 player in the entire NHL. Seth Jones, he's overhated just because of his contract. I'm still going to put him in like good to solid. By the way, we got Lacombe and Wallman over here, just so you know. I'm gonna put him in solid. He's an okay 40-ish point. Defensively, he's better than people give him credit for. But yeah, Mike Matheson, he's the time on ice leader right now for Montreal. That's why I put him. Lane Hudson would also be in good to solid. I'm not saying that he's in the same tier as Mackenzie Weegar or Brandon Montour, even though they like Lane Hudson a lot. Yeah, people killed me when I put Mike Matheson in this tier at the end of last season. 62 points. He's a power play merchant. He's not that good defensively. They should trade him. They probably could get a decent haul for him at this point, and this year he's kind of got it exposed. Gustav Forsling, I'm going to go with very good. Another guy that was a little bit overhyped last offseason. He was like NHL.com's number 5 or number 6 defenseman in the entire NHL. He is a very good 2-way, 45-ish point defenseman. I'm still taking these guys in this tier. Maybe you could convince me on Slavin. But outside of that, yeah, I think he's definitely closer to a Mackenzie Weegar than especially this top tier. Noah Dobson, maybe I'm a little bit biased, although I don't think he's playing that good this season. I'm still going to put him in very good. I still think that he's between like the range of like a 21 to 27 best defenseman in the entire NHL. His underlying numbers are very good, but yeah, I don't really think he's that good this season. Travis Sanheim having a very good season, but I'm still just going to put him in good to solid. But he's definitely in the upper echelon of this tier. Brock Faber, I think he gets a very good, yet again, playing like 25, 26 minutes a night. Solid offensively, pretty locked down defensively. He's really established himself as a legit number 1 in the NHL. And lastly, I'm going to go with Devin Bouchard. People probably think I'm going to put him in star. I'm just going to put him in elite. There has just been too many fumbles, too many mistakes by him this season. I think he's overhated still, but yeah, I think he's outside of my top, what would that be? Top 9. He might be that number 10 spot in terms of defensemen, but yeah, I think he's around 10 through 15 at this point. Probably going to dominate the playoffs yet again with McDavid and Draisaitl, but it has not been that good of a season for Evan Bouchard. Let me move my head out of the way real quick so you can see the rest of them. This is it. This is the tier list. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.